What happens when a secret I thought was buried gets exposed in front of everyone I know? How could one video ruin my life and make my husband turn against me in the most unexpected legal way? Can I really call it a misunderstanding when the evidence says otherwise, and the divorce papers are already in my hands? The bass was thumping through Jasper's apartment speakers, and I felt alive for the first time in weeks. The living room was packed with familiar faces from college, everyone laughing and drinking like we were 22 again, instead of pushing our mid-30s. I smoothed down my new black dress and grabbed another wine glass from the kitchen counter. "Ivadne, you look incredible tonight," Jasper said, sliding up beside me with that crooked smile that always made my heart skip. His hand brushed against my lower back as he reached for the wine bottle. "That dress is doing amazing things for you." I giggled and playfully swatted his arm. "Stop it, you charmer. You know I'm married." "Married, not buried," I heard my mother's voice echo in my head. She'd said those exact words to me just last week when I complained about Caleb being too serious all the time. Speaking of Caleb, I glanced across the room where my husband sat stiffly on Jasper's leather couch, nursing the same beer he'd been holding for an hour. His jaw was tight, and he kept checking his phone like he was looking for an excuse to leave early. Again. "Your husband looks thrilled to be here," Jasper whispered in my ear, his breath warm against my neck. "He's always like that at parties," I said, rolling my eyes. "Mr. Serious Teacher Man can't just relax and have fun like normal people." The truth was, Caleb had been weird about Jasper ever since I mentioned running into my old college friend at the coffee shop downtown 3 months ago. They used to be friends too, back in the day, but Caleb acted like Jasper was some kind of threat now. It was ridiculous. "Remember when we all used to party together?" Jasper asked, refilling my wine glass without asking. "Before everyone got all domesticated and boring." "Some of us aren't boring," I said, meeting his eyes with a meaningful look. Lynn, Caleb's older sister, appeared at my elbow with a concerned expression. She'd been watching me all night with those judgmental eyes of hers. "Ivadne, maybe you should slow down a bit," she said quietly. "People are starting to notice how friendly you and Jasper are being." I laughed loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear. "Notice what? That I'm actually having fun for once? That I'm not sitting in a corner being antisocial?" "That's not what I meant, and you know it," Lynn said, glancing nervously toward Caleb. "I'm just saying, maybe keep some distance. For everyone's sake." "Oh, please," I waved her off. "Jasper and I are old friends. There's nothing wrong with catching up and enjoying ourselves. Not everyone needs to be as uptight as your brother." Lynn's face darkened, but before she could respond, Jasper clapped his hands together loudly, getting everyone's attention. "Hey everyone, gather around. I've got something fun to show you all," he announced, pulling his phone from his pocket. I was going through my photos earlier and found some hilarious memories from this summer. My stomach dropped as I watched him connect his phone to the big screen TV mounted on his wall. The party guests crowded around, excited to see whatever embarrassing photos or videos Jasper had dug up. "Oh, this is going to be good," someone called out. "Jasper always has the best stories." I tried to catch Jasper's eye, to signal him to stop, but he was already scrolling through his phone with a mischievous grin. My heart started pounding as I realized what he might be about to show. "Here we go," Jasper said, his finger hovering over the play button. "This is from that amazing weekend trip to the mountains back in July. You guys are going to love this." The screen flickered to life, and I felt the color drain from my face as the opening frames of a video I'd hoped would stay private forever filled the room. The video started innocently enough, sweeping shots of pine trees and mountain vistas that could have been from any hiking trip. But I knew what was coming next, and my hand started trembling as I gripped my wine glass. "Oh, wow, look at that view," someone in the crowd said. "Where was this, Jasper?" "Little cabin retreat about 2 hours north," Jasper replied casually. "Perfect getaway spot for relaxation." On screen, the camera panned across a rustic wooden deck, then focused on a hot tub where steam was rising in the cool mountain air. My breath caught as I saw myself appear in the frame, laughing and splashing in the bubbling water. "Is that Ivadne?" asked Marcus, one of Caleb's old fraternity brothers. "I didn't know you went on mountain trips." I forced a laugh, trying to sound casual. "Oh, that was just a group thing. You know, a bunch of us from college decided to rent a place for the weekend." But even as I said it, I knew how weak it sounded. The camera lingered on me in the hot tub, wearing a tiny bikini I'd specifically bought for that trip. My hair was loose around my shoulders, and I was looking directly at whoever was holding the camera with an expression that was anything but innocent. I glanced desperately toward Caleb, who was still sitting on the couch. His face had gone completely pale, and his beer bottle was frozen halfway to his lips. His eyes were locked on the screen with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of shock, hurt, and dawning realization. "Group trip, huh?" Jasper said with a knowing smirk. "Funny, I don't remember anyone else being there." The video continued, and my worst fears were confirmed. The camera moved closer to the hot tub, and suddenly, Jasper himself appeared in the frame, sliding into the water beside me. On screen, I squealed with delight and immediately moved closer to him, my hands coming up to rest on his chest. The room had gone completely quiet, except for the sound of the video playing. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, and the weight of their judgment was crushing. "This is cozy," Video Jasper said, his arms wrapping around my waist underwater. "Good thing we have this whole place to ourselves." "Just the way I like it," Video me purred, tilting my head up toward his face. In the present moment, I wanted to disappear into the floor. The video was making it crystal clear that this had been no group trip. It was a romantic getaway for two. A weekend affair that I'd lied to Caleb about, telling him I was visiting my college roommate in Portland. "Well, this is awkward," someone muttered from the back of the room. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice came out shaky and unconvincing. "Oh, come on. We were just being silly. You know how people get when they're drinking and having fun." But the video wasn't done. The scene shifted to later that evening, showing Jasper and me sharing an intimate dinner by candlelight on the cabin's deck. We were holding hands across the table, gazing into each other's eyes, like lovers in a romantic movie. "Just friends, right?" Lynn said coldly from beside me. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the disgust in it was unmistakable. I whirled around to face her. "Don't you dare judge me, Lynn. You don't know what it's like being married to someone who treats you like a roommate instead of a wife." "So that makes this okay?" she shot back, gesturing toward the screen where Video Me was now feeding Jasper strawberries by hand. The party had completely stopped. No one was talking or laughing anymore. They were all just staring at the screen, then at me, then at Caleb. The tension in the room was suffocating. I looked toward my husband again, hoping to see some sign that we could work through this, that he understood it wasn't as bad as it looked. But Caleb had set down his beer and was quietly gathering his jacket from the back of the couch. "Caleb, wait," I called out, but he didn't even look at me. He walked toward the door with measured steps, his shoulders straight and his expression unreadable. Just before he left, he turned back to address the room. "Thank you for hosting, Jasper," he said in a voice that was perfectly calm and polite. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone." The door closed behind him with a quiet click, and suddenly I was furious. How dare he embarrass me like that? How dare he walk out and make me look like the villain in front of all our friends? I grabbed my phone and quickly snapped a selfie with Jasper, both of us grinning widely. I posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Some people know how to have fun, others just know how to be dramatic. #live your life, #no regrets." The party slowly resumed around me, but I could hear the whispers starting. People were taking sides, and I could already tell which way the wind was blowing. But I didn't care. I was tired of walking on eggshells around Caleb's feelings. When I finally got home at 2 a.m, I found Caleb's side of the bed, made with hospital corners, like he'd never planned to sleep in it. On my dresser was a single key I didn't recognize, along with a note that simply said, "Spare office key. I'll be working late from now on." I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache and a sick feeling in my stomach that had nothing to do with the wine. The house was eerily quiet, and when I checked the garage, Caleb's car was already gone. He usually left for school at 7:30, but it was barely 6 a.m. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications. The Instagram post from last night had blown up, but not in a good way. Most of the comments were from people I barely knew, offering opinions I definitely didn't want to hear. "Girl, this ain't it," wrote Sarah from my yoga class. "Your husband seems like such a nice guy." "This is sad," added Jennifer, who I'd met at a work conference. But the worst was from Tom, Caleb's best friend from college. "Really thought you were better than this, Ivadne. Caleb deserves so much more." I deleted the post and blocked Tom immediately. Who was he to judge my marriage? None of these people knew what it was like living with someone who came home every day, exhausted from dealing with teenagers, who fell asleep watching documentaries instead of talking to his wife, who hadn't planned a spontaneous date night in over 2 years. My mother called while I was getting ready for work. "Honey, I heard about what happened last night," Roxana said, her voice bright and unsympathetic as always. "Lynn called me this morning, all worked up about some video." "It's not as big a deal as everyone's making it," I said, applying concealer under my eyes to hide the evidence of my sleepless night. "People are just being dramatic." "Of course they are. Listen, sweetheart, you're young and beautiful. You shouldn't feel guilty about enjoying yourself. Marriage isn't a prison sentence." Her words were exactly what I needed to hear. "Thank you for understanding, Mom. Caleb's family is acting like I committed murder." "They're just protective of their precious boy," she said dismissively. "But you need to think about what makes you happy. Life's too short to spend it apologizing for having fun." I felt better after talking to her, but that confidence evaporated as soon as I got to work. The marketing firm where I worked was small enough that gossip traveled fast, and I could tell from the way conversation stopped when I walked by that the video had made its rounds. My boss, Patricia, called me into her office before I'd even had my first cup of coffee. "Ivadne, we need to talk," she said, closing the door behind me. "I received a call this morning from the Henderson account. Apparently, there's some kind of video circulating that shows you in a compromising situation." My face burned with embarrassment. "It's just a misunderstanding, Patricia. Someone took some innocent footage out of context, and people are reading too much into it. The client specifically mentioned that you appeared to be having an affair," Patricia continued, her voice professional but concerned. "They're questioning whether someone with such poor judgment should be handling their account." I felt a surge of anger. This is workplace discrimination. My personal life has nothing to do with my professional capabilities. You can't punish me for some gossip and rumors. Patricia held up her hand. "I'm not punishing you. I'm trying to help you understand that your actions have consequences beyond your marriage. Our clients trust us to represent their brands professionally. And right now, your personal brand is complicated." I wanted to argue more, but I could see it was pointless. Patricia had already made up her mind, just like everyone else. They were all taking Caleb's side without even hearing my story. The rest of the day was torture. Every meeting felt awkward, every conversation seemed to carry hidden meanings. By lunchtime, I was ready to scream. I decided to go home early, claiming I had a migraine. But when I walked into the house, I noticed something different. Caleb's home office door was closed, which was unusual. He normally left it open when he wasn't home. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tried the handle. Locked. I'd never known him to lock his office before. That's when I remembered the spare key he'd left on my dresser. Inside his office, everything looked normal at first glance. His desk was neat as always, his teaching materials organized in labeled folders. But when I opened his laptop, I found something that made my blood run cold. There was a spreadsheet titled Timeline Documentation, with dates, times, and detailed descriptions of my activities over the past 3 months. Every Instagram post, every late night out, every time I'd claimed to be somewhere I wasn't. It was all there, organized and cross-referenced like a legal document. July 15th to 17th, claimed Portland trip to visit college roommate. Instagram posts show mountain scenery. Roommate Jessica confirmed via phone that no visit occurred. July 22nd, posted photo at downtown bar, 11:47 p.m., claimed work dinner ended at 9 p.m. August 3rd, phone location services show 3-hour gap downtown during claimed grocery shopping trip. The list went on and on, painting a picture of deception that I couldn't deny or explain away. But what scared me most were the folder names I could see on his desktop. Personal evidence, financial records, and most ominously, legal consultation. I heard his car in the driveway and quickly closed the laptop, my heart racing. When he came through the front door, I was sitting casually on the couch pretending to watch TV. "You're home early," he said, not looking at me as he set down his briefcase. "Headache," I replied, studying his face for any sign that he knew I'd been in his office. He nodded and headed toward his study. "I'll be working late tonight. Don't wait up." As he closed and locked the office door behind him, I realized that my husband, the man I'd dismissed as boring and predictable, was methodically building a case against me, and I had no idea how far he was planning to take it. Sunday lunch at the Hartley family home had always been a tradition I'd grown to dread, but this week felt different, more loaded. Eleanor, Caleb's mother, had insisted that we still come despite recent events, as she diplomatically put it over the phone. I spent an hour getting ready, choosing a conservative blue dress that I hoped would project innocence and respectability. If the family was going to judge me, at least I'd look the part of a proper wife. Caleb barely spoke during the drive over, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The silence between us had become our new normal over the past week, but today it felt particularly heavy. "We need to present a united front," I said as we pulled into his parents' driveway. "Whatever your family says, we handle it together, okay?" He turned off the engine and looked at me for the first time in days. "A united front," he repeated slowly. "That's interesting phrasing, considering the circumstances." Before I could respond, he was out of the car and walking toward the house, leaving me to follow behind like a scolded child. The entire family was already gathered in the dining room when we arrived. Eleanor had set the table with her good china, as if formal place settings could somehow elevate the tension into civility. Richard, Caleb's father, stood when we entered, but his usual warm hug was replaced by a stiff nod. Lynn was there with her husband Mike, and she barely looked up from her plate when I said hello. The cold shoulder from my sister-in-law stung more than I wanted to admit. "Well, isn't this nice?" Eleanor said with forced brightness. "The whole family together again." We made it through the first course, Eleanor's famous butternut squash soup, with stilted conversation about the weather and local news. But I could feel the real topic hovering over the table, like a storm cloud waiting to break. Richard finally broke the pretense as Eleanor was serving the main course. "So, Ivadne," he said, his voice carefully measured, "I understand there was some kind of incident at a party last week." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "It was just a misunderstanding, Richard. People are making a much bigger deal out of it than necessary." "A misunderstanding," Lynn repeated, finally looking directly at me. "Is that what you're calling it?" "Lynn," Eleanor warned, but her daughter-in-law wasn't backing down. "No, Mom, someone needs to say it," Lynn continued, her voice rising. "We all saw the video. There's no misunderstanding about what was happening in that hot tub." The room went dead silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and anger. "I don't think my personal life is up for family discussion," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your personal life became family business the moment you humiliated my brother in front of half the town," Lynn shot back. I looked around the table, hoping for support from someone, anyone. But Eleanor was staring at her plate, Mike was studying the wall like it held fascinating secrets, and Richard was watching me with disappointment written all over his face. Only Caleb seemed calm, methodically cutting his roast beef into precise squares, like nothing unusual was happening. "I think everyone's overreacting," I said, my voice getting defensive despite my efforts to stay composed. "Yes, I went on a trip with an old friend. Yes, we had fun, but this family is acting like I committed some unforgivable sin." "An old friend," Richard said quietly. "Jasper Linwood used to be Caleb's friend too, didn't he?" The way he said it made my stomach clench. There was knowledge in his voice, details I hadn't expected him to have. "People grow apart," I said weakly. "Some people do," Richard agreed. "Others grow closer in ways they shouldn't." I slammed my hand on the table, making the china rattle. "I'm tired of these accusations. I'm tired of being treated like a criminal. Maybe if my husband paid half as much attention to me as he does to his precious students, I wouldn't have needed to find companionship elsewhere." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Everyone was staring at me now, and I realized I'd just confirmed everything they suspected. "There it is," Lynn said softly. "Finally, some honesty." Eleanor's eyes were filled with tears. "Ivadne, how could you? Caleb loves you so much." "Does he?" I laughed bitterly. "When's the last time he planned a surprise for me? When's the last time he looked at me the way Jasper does? I'm 32 years old and I was dying of boredom in this marriage." Richard stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I think you should leave now." "Richard, please," Eleanor started, but he held up his hand. "No, Eleanor, I won't sit at my table and listen to this disrespect. Caleb is a good man who deserves better than this." I looked at my husband, waiting for him to defend me, to tell his family that our marriage problems were complicated and that they didn't understand the whole story. But Caleb just kept eating his dinner, completely unmoved by the chaos around him. "Fine," I said, standing up and throwing my napkin on my plate. "I can see where I stand with this family, but don't pretend this is all my fault. It takes two people to kill a marriage." I stormed out of the dining room and headed for the car, expecting Caleb to follow me. But 5 minutes later, he still hadn't appeared. Through the window, I could see him still sitting at the table, having what looked like a calm conversation with his family. I drove home alone, furious at everyone and everything. As soon as I got to the house, I grabbed my phone and posted another photo with Jasper from the night before. We'd met for drinks after I'd told him about my terrible week. The caption read, "When loyalty becomes boring, humor helps. Real friends don't judge. #authentic life." But as I hit share, I caught a glimpse of myself in the black screen of my laptop, and for just a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. 3 days after the disastrous family lunch, I was starting to realize that my problems were bigger than I'd thought. The Instagram post with Jasper had been the final straw for several people in my life. My college friend Amanda had unfriended me on social media. 2 coworkers had stopped, including me in their lunch plans. Even my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who usually waved cheerfully when I got the mail, had started avoiding eye contact. But the person whose reaction confused me most was Caleb. Instead of getting angry or demanding explanations, he'd become eerily calm and methodical. He came home from work, ate dinner in silence, and disappeared into his locked office for hours at a time. I could hear him on phone calls, but his voice was always too low for me to make out the words. "What are you doing in there every night?" I finally asked him on Wednesday evening, as he headed toward his office with a stack of papers. "Organizing," he said simply, not breaking his stride. "Organizing what?" He paused at his office door and looked back at me, with an expression I couldn't read. "Everything." That night I lay awake listening to the sound of his printer running constantly. Whatever he was organizing required a lot of documentation. Thursday morning brought a call from Lynn that I almost didn't answer. Ivadne, we need to talk, she said without preamble. If you're calling to lecture me more about my marriage, I'm not interested. I'm calling to warn you, she said, her voice urgent. Caleb's been making copies of everything. Bank statements, phone records, social media posts. He's been to see a lawyer twice this week. My blood ran cold. A lawyer? What kind of lawyer? What do you think? Lynn's voice was sharp. He's building a divorce case, and from what I can see, it's going to be airtight. I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly unable to support me. He can't be serious. It was just one weekend. One stupid mistake. Was it, though? Lynn asked. Because the evidence he's collected suggests this has been going on for months. After she hung up, I sat in stunned silence for a long time. Divorce? The word felt foreign and terrifying. I'd never imagined Caleb would actually leave me. He was supposed to be the stable one, the one who worked through problems instead of running away. But as the day went on, I started to get angry again. Who was he to judge me? Who was he to collect evidence like I was some kind of criminal? I'd made a mistake, but his cold, calculating response was worse than anything I'd done. That evening, I decided to take control of the narrative. I called Jasper and asked him to meet me for dinner at Romano's, the upscale Italian place downtown where everyone went to see and be seen. Are you sure that's wise? He asked. Things seem pretty heated with your husband right now. I'm tired of hiding, I said. I'm tired of acting ashamed of spending time with someone who actually appreciates me. We had a wonderful dinner. Jasper was charming and attentive, everything Caleb hadn't been in years. He listened when I talked, laughed at my jokes, and made me feel like the most interesting woman in the restaurant. I posted several photos throughout the evening. Us clinking wine glasses, sharing dessert, laughing at something on his phone. The final post was a selfie of us outside the restaurant, Jasper's arm around my waist, both of us grinning widely. Some people spend their lives playing it safe, I wrote. Others choose to actually live. No regrets about choosing happiness. #live authentically. #choose joy. I felt empowered and defiant as I posted it. Let everyone see that I wasn't going to cower or apologize anymore. Let them see that I had options, that I wasn't desperate to save a marriage that had been dead for years anyway. But when I got home, I found Caleb sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and a strange expression on his face. Good dinner? He asked mildly. Very good, thank you, I replied, lifting my chin defiantly. He nodded and turned his laptop screen toward me. It was open to my Instagram account, showing the photos I'd just posted. But what made my stomach drop was the spreadsheet next to it, documenting every post with timestamps, locations, and what looked like legal annotations. You've been busy tonight, he observed. I had dinner with a friend. I'm allowed to have friends, Caleb. Of course you are, he agreed, and I'm allowed to document my wife's public behavior during our marriage, for the record. The way he said, for the record, sent a chill down my spine. It sounded so official, so final. What record? I asked, but he was already closing the laptop and standing up. I'll be working late again tonight, he said, heading toward his office. I have a lot to organize still. As he disappeared behind his locked door, I noticed something I'd missed before. There were boxes in the hallway, neat, labeled boxes that looked like they were ready to be moved. My phone buzzed with a text from Lynn. I tried to warn you, he's not the same person he was 2 weeks ago. You broke something in him, and now he's protecting himself the only way he knows how. Legally. I stared at the message for a long time, finally beginning to understand that I might have pushed my quiet, methodical husband past a point of no return. But even then, I told myself it was just a scare tactic. Caleb loved me. He wouldn't actually go through with a divorce. I was about to learn just how wrong I could be. The next morning, I woke to the sound of tape being pulled from a dispenser, sharp, rhythmic, deliberate. Downstairs, Caleb was sealing one of the boxes I'd seen in the hallway. The label read, Books Caleb Only, in his precise block printing. He didn't look up when I appeared in the doorway. You're packing? My voice cracked on the last word. Not yet. He pressed the tape down firmly. Pre-packing makes things easier if it comes to that. If, he straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. Probability is high. I've run the numbers. I almost laughed. Run the numbers. Like our marriage was a spreadsheet he could audit. Since when do you quantify love? Since I realized feelings don't stop consequences. He gestured toward the kitchen table, where a single sheet of paper waited beside his coffee mug. That's a list of items we each brought into the marriage. Non-marital property. My lawyer suggested I start separating them now. Avoids disputes later. I walked over slowly, as though the paper might explode. The list was typed, double-spaced, bullet points marching down the page. My grandmother's china set, his vinyl collection from college, the car I'd bought before we met, his retirement account funded entirely pre-marriage. At the bottom, in red ink, he'd added a handwritten note. Joint assets to be appraised if necessary. Appraised, I echoed. You want to sell the house? I want options. He took a sip of coffee, calm as if we were discussing weekend plans. If we reconcile, great. Everything stays. If not, I won't be the one begging for half the sofa while you argue sentimental value. The casual cruelty of it stung more than shouting ever could. This wasn't anger. This was preparation. Surgical. Emotionless. I reached for the list, but he slid it away gently. Not yet. It's still a draft. My eyes burned. You really think we're done? I think you're the one who decided that when you chose Jasper over transparency. I'm just catching up. He turned back to the box, adding a final strip of tape. The sound echoed in the quiet kitchen like a door slamming. That afternoon, I tried calling Jasper to end it. Clean break, no drama. But when I dialed, the line went straight to voicemail. I left a message, voice shaking. It's over. For good. Don't contact me again. Then I blocked him everywhere. When Caleb came home that evening, I showed him the call log, the blocked number, the sent message, proof. He studied the screen for a long moment. Good start, he said. No warmth, no relief, just acknowledgement. Is that all? I asked, desperate for something more. It's day 1 of 30, he reminded me. Consistency matters more than grand gestures. He went to his office again, door clicking shut. I stood in the hallway staring at the growing line of boxes, each one a small surrender of the life we'd shared. The guest room felt colder that night. I lay awake listening to the faint clicks of his keyboard through the wall. More documentation, more evidence, more distance. In the morning, I found a new note on the fridge, stuck with a magnet shaped like the Eiffel Tower, from our honeymoon. Counseling appointment Thursday, 7 p.m., neutral third party. Your choice to attend or not. No pressure. No pressure. The phrase almost made me laugh through the tears. I didn't know if I could face a stranger dissecting our wreckage. I didn't know if I wanted to fight for a man who was already half gone. But for the first time, I understood that the choice wasn't mine alone anymore. Caleb had taken back the pen. He was writing the ending now, whether reconciliation or dissolution, and all I could do was decide if I'd appear in the final draft as the wife who stayed to repair, or the one who became just another entry in the personal folder. Either way, the quiet man I'd married had become someone who no longer waited for permission to protect himself. And that realization hurt more than any argument ever had. Friday morning started like any other day, except Caleb was already gone when I woke up, and there was a note on the kitchen counter that simply read, "Please be home at 2 p.m. today. Important delivery expected." I spent the morning at work trying to focus on a presentation for a new client, but my mind kept wandering to those boxes in the hallway and Lynn's warning about lawyers. By lunchtime, I'd convinced myself that I was overreacting. Caleb was probably just trying to scare me into apologizing. Once I explained that the thing with Jasper was over, that I was willing to work on our marriage, everything would go back to normal. I left work early and got home at 1:45, wanting to be there, when whatever delivery arrived. The house felt different somehow, emptier. It took me a moment to realize that several of Caleb's things were missing: his favorite reading chair from the living room, the coffee maker he'd bought last Christmas. Small things, but their absence was noticeable. At exactly 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a professional-looking woman in a grey suit holding a thick manila envelope. "Ivadne Hartley?" she asked. "Yes, that's me. I'm serving you with legal documents on behalf of Caleb Hartley. Please sign here to acknowledge receipt." My hands were shaking as I signed the paper. The envelope felt impossibly heavy as she handed it to me. "Have a good day, ma'am," she said, walking back to her car, like she'd just delivered a pizza instead of what I was beginning to realize might be the end of my marriage. I closed the door and leaned against it, staring at the envelope. My name was typed on the front in official-looking font, along with a case number that made everything feel suddenly, terrifyingly real. Inside were more papers than I'd expected. The first document was titled Petition for Dissolution of Marriage, and seeing those words in black and white made my knees weak. But it was the second document that made me sink onto the couch in shock. Exhibit A, documentation of marital misconduct, was followed by page after page of evidence that painted a picture of systematic deception I couldn't deny. There were screenshots of every Instagram post I'd made over the past 6 months, organized chronologically. Photos of me with Jasper at various restaurants and bars, with timestamps showing they occurred on nights when I'd told Caleb I was working late or out with girlfriends. Credit card statements highlighted charges at hotels, restaurants, and bars that corresponded with my social media posts. Phone records showing calls and texts to Jasper's number, sometimes lasting hours, often late at night. The mountain trip was documented in excruciating detail. My lie about visiting Jessica in Portland was exposed with a signed statement from Jessica herself, confirming that no such visit had occurred. Hotel receipts showed I'd stayed at the mountain cabin with Jasper for 3 nights, not the weekend trip I'd claimed. But the most damaging evidence was a USB drive labeled Video and Audio Documentation. I didn't even want to know what was on it, but the accompanying note explained that it contained social media posts, public videos, and recorded conversations demonstrating ongoing deception and infidelity. The final page was a property settlement proposal that was fair to the point of being generous. Caleb was asking for nothing more than his personal belongings and half of our shared assets. He wasn't seeking alimony or trying to punish me financially. He just wanted out, and he wanted it to be clean and legal. I was still staring at the papers when I heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, I saw Caleb getting out of his sedan, but he didn't come to the door. Instead, he stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching the house with an expression of calm resignation. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch, the legal papers still clutched in my hand. "How long have you been planning this?" I called out to him. "Since the night of Jasper's party," he replied, his voice carrying clearly across the yard. That's when I realized that the woman I married was gone, and I needed to accept it. "Caleb, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can go to counseling. We can fix this." He shook his head slowly. "You posted photos with him 3 days ago, Ivadne. While I was serving you with divorce papers, you were having dinner with the man you cheated with. That's not someone who wants to fix anything." I looked down at the evidence packet in my hands. Months of lies and deception laid out in black and white. For the first time, I saw my behavior through his eyes, and the picture wasn't pretty. "I never meant for it to go this far," I said, and for once I was telling the truth. "I know," he said, "but it did go this far, and now we both have to live with the consequences." A black sedan pulled up behind Caleb's car, and I watched as Lynn got out of the driver's seat. She walked over to stand beside her brother, not saying anything, just offering silent support. "Your family will never forgive me," I said. "My family loved you for 8 years," Caleb replied, "but you made choices that changed everything. I can't ask them to pretend those choices didn't happen. I wanted to argue, to fight, to find some way to make him understand that I'd just been lonely and confused. But looking at him standing there, calm, dignified, and completely resolved, I realized that the time for explanations had passed. "The papers say you want this finalized quickly," I said. "I see no point in dragging it out. You're not happy being married to me, and I can't trust you anymore. We both deserve better than that." He walked to his car and opened the driver's side door, then paused and looked back at me one final time. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Ivadne. I really do." As I watched him drive away with Lynn following behind, I realized that my husband, the man I'd dismissed as boring and predictable, had just executed the most thorough and devastating breakup I'd ever witnessed. He'd documented everything, protected himself legally, and maintained his dignity throughout the entire process. I looked down at the divorce papers again, seeing my signature required in multiple places. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasper. "Hey, beautiful, want to grab drinks tonight?" For the first time in months, the idea of seeing him made me feel sick to my stomach. I walked back into the house that would soon be sold as part of our settlement, closed the door behind me, and finally understood that some mistakes can't be undone, no matter how much you want to take them back. 6 months later, I was living in a small apartment across town, single and starting over at 32. Caleb had moved on, with a grace and dignity that made me realize what I'd lost. The last I heard, he was dating a fellow teacher who appreciated his quiet stability and dry sense of humor. As for Jasper, he'd moved on to someone new within weeks of my divorce being finalized. Apparently, the thrill of the affair had been more appealing than the reality of an actual relationship. I learned that actions have consequences, that trust once broken is nearly impossible to repair, and that sometimes the quiet, steady people in your life are worth more than all the excitement in the world. But I learned it too late.